So first, I want to reassure the community that 19-year-old Ezekiel Kelly is in fact in custody. This has been a horrific week for the city of Memphis and the Memphis Police Department. We extend our sincere condolences to all the victims who have been affected in this sequence of violent acts today. We want to express our sincere appreciation to our citizens who provided numerous tips throughout this ordeal. I would also like to thank the officers of the Memphis Police Department and other law enforcement agencies who assisted in the relentless pursuit and the successful arrest of Ezekiel Kelly. On September 7th, 2022, at 12:56 a.m., officers responded to a shooting in the 3100 block of Glendale Avenue. Officers located a male victim in the driveway. The male was pronounced deceased on the scene. The homicide suspect was known as Zeke Hunter. He was later identified as Ezekiel Kelly, 19 years old. At 4:38 p.m., officers responded to a shooting in the 900 block of South Parkway East. Officers located a male victim in his vehicle with multiple gunshot wounds. He was pronounced deceased on the scene. Video surveillance at the business revealed a black male pulled up next to the victim in a gray sedan. The suspect fired multiple shots and fled south on College Street. At 4:40 p.m., officers responded to a shooting at Norris Road and Interstate 240. Officers located a female victim with a gunshot wound to the leg. The victim was transported to the hospital non-critical. The suspect fled in a dark-colored sedan eastbound on Norris Road. At 5:59, officers responded to a shooting in the 4000 block of Jackson Avenue. Ezekiel Kelly was on Facebook Live when he opened fire inside the store. Officers located a male with a gunshot wound. He was transported to the hospital in critical condition. At 6:12 p.m., we received information from a concerned citizen that suspect was on Zeke Huncho's Facebook Live, stating that he was threatening to cause harm to citizens. At this time, the Memphis Police Department launched a citywide search for the assailant. We deployed additional manpower and asked for assistance from partner agencies to locate Ezekiel Kelly. We began to utilize our social media platforms to alert citizens and contact our local media agencies to alert our citizens of the impending danger. At that time, we also recommended that they shelter in place. At 7:23 p.m., officers responded to a shooting at Poplar Avenue in North Evergreen. A female who had been shot was located on the scene. The suspect took the victim's vehicle, a gray SUV, and fled the scene. At 7:24, officers responded to a shooting at Poplar Avenue in North McLean Boulevard. A male victim who had been shot was located and transported to the hospital non-critical. At 8:55 p.m., officers responded to the 800 block of West Rains regarding a shooting. Officers located one female victim on the scene with gunshot wounds. She was pronounced deceased on the scene. At 8:56, South Haven Police Department responded to the area of State Line Road and Highway 51 regarding a carjacking. The suspect carjacked the victim at gunpoint and took a gray Dodge Challenger, leaving behind the gray SUV that was taken from the Poplar Avenue and North Evergreen location. The victim was uninjured at this scene. At 8:58 p.m., Memphis police officers spotted the Dodge Challenger northbound on Interstate 55 from State Line Road. A high-speed pursuit began. The pursuit terminated at Hodge Road and Ivanhoe. The male driver, identified as Ezekiel Kelly, was taken into custody without incident by the Memphis Police Department and the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. 2 weapons were visible inside the vehicle where Kelly was. The Homicide Division and other investigative units are actively working these crime scenes now, and numerous felony charges are pending. We will consult with our district attorney's office and DA Steve Mulroy and release all charges after Kelly is officially charged and transported to 201 Poplar Avenue. At this time, we will have comments from Mayor Jim Strickland. From our Sheriff Floyd Bonney.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning. Yes, good morning to all. Once again, our community has been faced with another senseless act of violence. Our citizens in Memphis and Shelby County were going about their business. Ordinary citizens doing ordinary things, getting off from work, picking up children from daycare, just going about their ordinary lives when it was all of a sudden shattered. Many families were shattered tonight. Many families will never, ever get over the horrific violence that we saw that one individual inflicted on this city tonight. So my condolences to the families. We want to thank all of our law enforcement partners once again for the spirit of cooperation that we experienced here like none other in this city. And I want to assure the public that we're all going to be working together to try to curb this senseless violence here in Memphis and Shelby County. With that being said, I'd like to turn it over to our Acting Assistant Special Agent in Charge, Colleen Roberts.
Good morning. On behalf of ATF, I would like to extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends affected by this senseless and terrible acts of violence. ATF will continue to use all our available resources and expertise to assist the Memphis Police Department and Shelby County Sheriff's Office, as well as our other state and local partners, to bring the family and friends some sense of justice. I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Strickland at this point.
I want to first express my deepest sympathy and condolences to the victims and their families who are suffering from this senseless murder rampage. I am angry. I am angry for them, and I'm angry for our citizens who had to shelter in place for their own safety until this suspect was caught. This is no way for us to live, and it is not acceptable. The people of our city were confronted with the type of violence no one should have to face. Ezekiel Kelly was charged with criminal attempted first-degree murder, but pled guilty in April of 2021 to the lesser charge of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 3 years, but only served 11 months in prison and was released on March 16, 2022, less than 6 months ago. These evil actions show why truth in sentencing is a must. And we should do all we can to make our city safe. We should not be terrorized by anyone. Anyone who wants to strike fear in our hearts and take away what we love about Memphis. We must unite around this principle and stand up to to the challenge of violent crime in our city. If Mr. Kelly served his full 3-year sentence, he would still be in prison today, and 4 of our fellow citizens would still be alive. Thank you to the state legislature, led by Speaker Sexton and Lieutenant Governor McNally, for passing truth in sentencing. From now on, 3 years for aggravated assault means 3 years. Our judicial system is too often a revolving door. A citizen emailed me today, and she said, quote, unless there are real consequences for criminal behavior, it will continue. I agree 100%. We need our courts. We need additional state laws to stop this revolving door. And I need the public to make your voices heard by those decision makers. I want to thank the men and women of the Memphis Police Department and all supporting law enforcement agencies who supported in capturing the suspect tonight, and of course aided in the search for Eliza Fletcher earlier this week. This has been a painful week in our city, but I have hope for Memphis. I have love for Memphis. And I know that united, we will endure. Thank you. I'll now bring up Steve Mulroy, our District Attorney General.
Thank you, Ms. Strickland, and good morning, everyone. This has been a horrific week for Memphis and Shelby County. People are frightened. People are angry. In times like this, it's sometimes hard for people to know what to do. I can tell you one thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray for the victims and their families. I'm also going to say a prayer of thanks for law enforcement who acted superbly both today and all week long. I was privileged to be in the command center this evening and watched as law enforcement calmly and coolly, but nonetheless with urgency, did what they had to do to follow the leads and apprehend this person and prevent further bloodshed. We all owe them a debt of gratitude, and I think I was reassured, again, that we have competent law enforcement that can do everything they can in their power to keep us safe. The other thing I would recommend that we do is, if we know somebody, a friend or a loved one, who is seemingly experiencing emotional distress, maybe on the verge of snapping, particularly if they're armed, reach out to them. Show them that you care. And if appropriate, contact law enforcement. As for our office, as I have said before and I'll say again, it's our policy that repeat violent offenders deserve a strong response. And that's precisely what they'll get from this DA office. We'll be working closely with law enforcement as we have been and will continue to do so, to bring appropriate charges at the appropriate time to make sure that justice is done in this case. But I'm also confident that if we unite, and I think we will, law enforcement, different aspects of government, and all of us as a community, if we come together, we will find the strength to stem this tide of violence, this flood of violence, and make our community safe. Thank you.
Chief Davis, the shooting at 723 at Poplar and Evergreen, was that a fatal?
Yes, it was.
So 4 dead, 3 wounded? total?
That's correct.
Okay, and 8 crime scenes that we know of?
I'm not sure.
But there's a
exact
hard
numbers.
backing.
It's at least 8.
At least 8.
We are still in the throes of the investigation. There could potentially be other locations, there could potentially be other damage in other places. So we'll have more information, we'll continue to update.
Thank you.
Chief Davis, did you mention 12:56 as the first scene? 12:56 p.m.
12:56 a.m. last night.
at last night? We wanted
Last
to
night.
clarify that.
This was the initial homicide that this individual was responsible for. At that time, we didn't know exactly who that individual was. But more information as the day went on, we were able to identify this suspect.
Chief, a lot of people are hurting right now. What's your message? What can people do to get involved? What solutions can citizens do?
Well, our DA mentioned a very important aspect of what we are seeing. Certainly, people are hurting right now. People are suffering from various types of illnesses and stress, and they are absolutely demonstrating these levels of stress in violent ways. We've seen that over the last week. And if you see something or you know an individual that is expressing aggression, and thanks to our citizens who saw this on Facebook, this expression of aggression, the comments that were made, we were able to act and act quickly. But we're seeing more and more instances where people are acting out and their behavior is beyond normal, and this conflict is being acted out with gun violence.
For citizens feeling hopeless tonight, what can citizens do? How can citizens help?
Well, D.A. Mulroy mentioned that he was going to pray. I think we all want to pray. That is a personal thing for me, but at the same time, we need to reach out to those individuals in our community that we know are committing crimes, and we know that we can pick up the telephone and call somebody to help us intervene and get them the help that they need, or take them through the judicial process and prosecute them for the crimes that they're committing. We need the community's help.
Chief, 4 dead, 3 injured in 3 locations, as you mentioned. We also had an officer shot last week. We had multiple reported kidnappings. Just talk about the strain that this has placed on public servants across the city and just how unusual it's been.
It is certainly an anomaly for us to experience so much in such a short period of time. Our officers have exhibited unbelievable resilience in the last several weeks. They've been shot at, and they know about one time, but they've been shot at several times. They continue to come to work. They continue to do the work because they know that the community depends on them. We saw that tonight. We're grateful that this incident didn't last longer than what it did. It lasted too long for all of us. But because of the response and their willingness to continue to do this work, we just have to continue to motivate them, give them the support that they need, and get the community to help us. And that's what this plea is tonight.
When it comes to youth, and we've seen this a couple of times in our community in Whitehaven with Reverend Houston Williams, 15-year-old who had done a previous crime, same crime, did it again, resulted in a murder again with the Eliza Fletcher case with Henderson, and now this. As far as dealing with recidivism rates, where do you think we should start with that?
Well, I think that we all need to take responsibility for our specific roles in the criminal justice system. We all have a responsibility and should be held accountable for what the community expects us to do. We are the response arm for various crimes, but all too often our officers are responding to the same individuals committing violent acts. They are frustrated and we are frustrated. The community is frustrated. We want it to stop, and the only way we're going to make it stop is if we approach this from a holistic standpoint. Every element of the criminal justice system has to be working together at the same time.
For the ATF, how did Kelly get the gun?
Well, we're still at the beginning stages of investigation, and I'm not going to say anything that's going to compromise this investigation. It's still fresh.
legally or illegally? Do you know?
I'm not going to speak on that right now.
Chief, can you walk us through how you learned that it was Kelly? Was it a social media? Mayor, can you just speak to the challenge of keep Memphis' spirits up, encouraging people to move to this beautiful city despite all of these violent events?
I'll speak first, and there were several tidbits of information, and I think it was just the investigators realizing that this Facebook name was associated with Mr. Kelly. This Zeke Moncho, I believe it was, or Moncho Zeke, and we realized that this was probably the same individual. We began to really look into the original homicide case and the information that we had and put two and two together as related to his identity.
Despite our long-term challenge with violent crime, there are real bright spots in Memphis. For the first time in decades, our population grew over the last 10 years. For the first time in decades. We had more Memphians employed a couple months ago than the history of the city. You see all the building constructions and more jobs coming from St. Jude and Blue Oval City. So there are bright spots. But I need the public to engage. I welcome being held primarily responsible for lowering violent crime. But I do not have the authority over bonds, over state sentencing laws, over rehabilitation of people in prison. I need the public to hold other people accountable. Because I'm tired of our police officers arresting the same people over and over and over, and those people committing violent acts. I think the public's fed up with it too, but they need to let their voice be heard to these other institutions that play a role. Call your state legislature. Stay engaged with our judicial system and these judges who pass out these slap of the wrist sentences. And 201 Poplar is a revolving door. Juvenile court is a revolving door on steroids. No one is held accountable there. And with our schools' truancy, the kids aren't being held accountable, the parents aren't being held accountable. I want the public to hold all of us accountable, me included, but all these other entities. And I'd ask the media to ask those people, what are you doing about this violent crime? The problem is not the Memphis Police Department, because they're arresting people. The problem is this judicial system that will not punish. That is our problem.
D.A. Mulroy, if we could, if you could expand upon what you plan to do by getting tough, as you say, on crime. You're going to pray, how do we get tough? You're taking office, replacing someone who supporters of you say didn't do the job. How are you going to do the job?
Well, I don't want to get into a protracted policy debate tonight. I think tonight is a night for grieving and coming together and expressing concern about this horrific week that we've had. You know, I can say in general what I've been saying all along, that repeat violent offenders require a tough response, and that will mean long prison sentences, right? But at the same time, Chief Davis talked about a holistic approach. Rehabilitation has got to be part of it, because in most of these cases, people will eventually come out of prison. You know, most crimes don't trigger life sentences, and they're either going to come out having been rehabilitated and have been given the skills that they need to have an alternative to life on the street, or they won't, and then they'll have no choice. Well, they won't have a choice. They'll have a choice, but what they'll tend to do is to return the only life they know, which is life on the street. And unfortunately, I think we've been doing a lot of the latter, and we need to be doing more of the former.
You've got to get these kids young, which means
early intervention for
youth. As you
youth.
pointed out in your newsletter last Friday, truancy is a big issue. Truancy is not being handled very well, according to your newsletter, Mr. Mayor, by the Memphis City, Shelby County school system. Lack of a relationship between the DA's office and the largest school system in the state. How are you going to change that?
Well, I mean, I'm going to have a dialogue with the school system. We need to establish a better relationship between the DA's office and the school system. I think there are cooperative things we can do. I don't know that, necessarily locking up the parents or taking away their benefits, which I've heard some people mention, is going to be necessarily the most constructive approach, but I think a relationship between the DA's office and the school system is something that I would like to reestablish.
Okay, one final question. Mental health. It's a huge issue, has been during the pandemic. Now that we're out of it, who do people call? You suspect your loved one is struggling, you suspect they're dangerous. Who do they call? Who do they reach out? What number do they dial? How do we help the community help others?
Well, there's several entities here in the city. Alliance Healthcare is one, MMHI. There are several different, and we really do depend on Alliance Healthcare and MMHI. It's important that when we see individuals that are suffering from obvious mental illness, instead of waiting for something to happen, something tragic like what happened tonight, we need to act. Because, as I said before, the police department is the response end. And unfortunately, our officers are getting exhausted. They're getting angry too. And it gets more and more difficult for them to come to work every day and be shot at, and to still have a spirit of altruism in the work that we do, and at the same time take care of our community. But they are relentless, and we're not going to give up on Memphis. We are not going to give up on Memphis. We're going to be here, and we're going to work with anybody that's willing to work with us to move the needle in another direction.
How are you taking care of your officers' mental health?
Well, funny you would ask, we do have a peer support program. We have all kinds of technology that helps our officers to reach out to an app that we have developed in the police department. We have various types of help organizations that they can reach out to anonymously. We have various training for them as well. Conflict management and all kinds of de-escalation training, crisis intervention. I'm a very big proponent of officer health and wellness. And we have a very robust program in the Memphis Police Department. And in a climate like this, we need it.
Okay, thank you. If you have any more questions, you can send us to the after. We'll have more information gathered tomorrow.